On this week's episode of Ride the Lightning, the Tesla unofficial podcast, it's my favorite episode to do every quarter, the earnings call analysis. I've got highlights and my insights on everything that was said by Elon and the rest of the Tesla executive team during the Q1 conference call. Buckle up. Welcome, friends. I'm Ryan McCaffrey. This is episode number 144 of Ride the Lightning, the Tesla unofficial podcast for May 6th, 2018. I am flanked, as always, by the chilled out Daisy the Boxer Puppy, and I don't want to waste any time. There is a lot to get to this week. It was a pretty crazy conference call for the Q1 earnings that Elon Musk and the Tesla executive team opened up to investors, analysts, and even it was referred to as a YouTuber, but I guess he does have a YouTube thing, but he represents a group of retail stockholders. And he got some good time with Elon Musk on the call. But before I get to that, I wanted to just open with one quick tip before I forget. So a friend of mine at work, Todd, took delivery of his beautiful Model 3 this week, the first one in our building. We've got two or three Model S's down there at all times, but first Model 3 goes Todd's way. Looks gorgeous. The fit and finish looked phenomenal. I myself and another coworker and Todd all walked around it, and we're kind of talking about that topic. Like, man, no, this car looks great. So anyway, he found out an interesting thing because he lives in the North Bay, and long story short, this is kind of a Bay Area specific pro tip, but it could potentially apply to your area as well. So when you take delivery of your Model 3, and I presume this applies to Model S and Model X as well, you might want to go in and disable the option in the navigation settings that defaults to routing you through areas with no tolls. Where in other words, turn off the avoid tolls thing, because he showed me the screenshot. He was trying to get home from just like near Oakland, basically. I know this is the geography here is not going to you're not going to be able to picture this if you don't live here probably, but anyway, basically it wanted to route him about 100 miles all the way down the East Bay and around San Jose and back up to the North Bay just to avoid the bridges that span across the San Francisco Bay to get him home. So just a pro tip, maybe a little life hack for you upcoming new Model 3 owners, particularly those Bay Area folks. Check that toll setting. It might not be, I'm sure in most areas it works great, but in the Bay Area it might not be quite the way you want to go. With that, let's move on to the big story of the week. As always, it's the Tesla quarterly sales call. Shareholders, analysts, etc., taking part in the call, and this is going to take a lot of time. This is going to be probably a long show. I've got 20 clips from this call. I've as usual, I want to boil it down for you, give you the best stuff, play it for you, react to it, give some analysis, cut out the fluff. Although Flufferbot, you will hear that is not fluff. That is actual content this week. That will make sense very soon if you did not already listen to the conference call. So the Ride the Lightning hotline. I've been getting all your calls all week, of course. I've been going through them, and I encourage you to please continue sending them. But I'm not going to do them this week because this is already going to be well over an hour show, I'm quite sure. So I've got those banked, ready to go for next week's show, and keep your calls coming. I suspect a number of you are going to want to react to this. There is a lot that was said. There's plenty to talk about with the earnings call. So do keep your calls coming on the Ride the Lightning hotline. You can either just record a question on your smartphone, try to keep it to a minute and a half tops, and email that file to me at teslapodcast@gmail.com. Alternatively, you can use the toll-free Ride the Lightning hotline. You're just calling in and leaving a message. It's that simple. And that number is 1-888-989-8752. That's 1-888-989-TSLA. So we'll get to that next week. And here we go on to the conference call. First, the shareholder letter that accompanies that. I want to just go through that real quick. So Tesla writing, prior to a planned shutdown in mid-April to further increase production, we produced more than 2,000 Model 3 vehicles for 3 straight weeks, and we hit 2,270 in the last of those weeks. Even at this stage of the ramp, Model 3 is already on the cusp of becoming the best-selling mid-sized premium sedan in the U.S., and our deliveries continue to increase. So that is, we're sitting at about 2,300 a week. So just come on 3,000, and then after that, come on 4,000, and then the big one, come on 5,000. So we'll see how long it takes. Elsewhere in the letter, quote, for months, the battery module line was our main production bottleneck. After deploying multiple semi-automated lines and improving our original lines, we have largely overcome this bottleneck. Consequently, we now expect to reach a module production rate of 5,000 car sets per week, but even before we install the new automated line designed and built by Tesla in Germany. That would be the Grohmann team. So, very glad to hear that that particular bottleneck is behind them. We'd heard about that on the last conference call, and that the answer was in development by Grohmann and being packed up and shipped out to Gigafactory. So that appears to have taken place and been successful. Good stuff there. Moving on in the shareholder letter, quote, we continue to target Model 3 production of approximately 5,000 per week in about 2 months. Although our prior experience has demonstrated the difficulty of accurately forecasting specific production rates at specific points in time because of the exponential nature of the ramp. In order to achieve this production rate, we plan to take additional days of downtime during Q2, just like we did in Q1. Now, some of those days have already occurred. That was the mid-April one that was referenced there. But the 5,000 per week target then is indeed July, as Elon had tweeted out recently, though note that they do indeed leave themselves an out if they don't get there. Just saying, hey, things don't always go according to plan. All right. Next bit here. Quote, after achieving a production rate of 5,000 per week, we will begin offering new options such as all-wheel drive and the base model with a standard size battery pack. Once we hit the 5,000 per week milestone, we intend to incorporate our learnings to continue to increase output on our existing manufacturing lines beyond 5,000 units per week, and then in a capital efficient manner to add incremental capacity to ultimately get to a 10,000 unit weekly rate. So the Elon tweet I mentioned a moment ago, they are making that tweet official there by saying dual motor will be available once they hit 5,000 cars per week. Now, with the standard battery thing, I have to presume that the timeline previously laid out still holds, that it's still going to be late 2018 or for a lot of folks, early 2019 on that. You never know. They may have plans to try and move that up, but I don't think that I don't think that's what they're saying here. I think as long as we have to still just go by the delivery estimator for this until we hear otherwise. But no mention of the performance model, which is par for the course. We have yet to. Elon Musk on Twitter is the only person to ever make any reference to a performance model whatsoever. But then again, remember, technically, a performance model would be part of the all-wheel drive family, so fingers crossed that it is indeed coming alongside the dual motor. We'll see about that. A couple more quotes from the letter. The first one here, quote, Model 3 net reservations, including configured orders that had not yet been delivered, continued to exceed 450,000 at the end of Q1, even though fewer than 20 stores worldwide had Model 3 on display. We are planning to deploy significantly more Model 3 vehicles in our stores in Q2 this year. So I found the mention of configured orders that had not yet been delivered as part of that. So I have to figure that if they're including configured cars that haven't been delivered yet, I wonder that if that figure must barely be over 450,000. Otherwise, why bother to mention? I mean, it's not a big deal. It's still a lot either way. Demand remains strong despite the delays. And the final excerpt I wanted to read to you here from the shareholder letter is this, quote, We have good visibility of our path to fully ramp and stabilize Model 3 production this year. Model 3 is already the best-selling electric vehicle and, more importantly, on the cusp of becoming the best-selling premium sedan in the US. The path to an electrified revolution is not easy, but what we're trying to achieve is worth fighting for. Thanks for your continued support. And then it is signed Elon and Deepak. So the bit about best-selling premium sedan, I have to presume that that includes the BMW 3 Series as well as the Audi A4. And if so, that's very impressive. If they're going to overtake the BMW 3 Series in the US, now, obviously the 3 Series, highly successful product line for BMW, and they sell a lot of cars worldwide, obviously a ton in Europe, in the homeland, and they're a German company. So, it's not like the 3 Series is dying by any stretch at all, but it's great to see that at least on Tesla's home turf, and the only place that Tesla is delivering Model 3s so far here in North America, that they are looking like they're on the cusp of passing the BMW 3 Series in monthly sales. All right, time for the call itself. Buckle up here. I've got about 10 minutes of Elon Musk's opening remarks. You guys know I always like to play these for you because this is sort of his State of the Union for the quarter. And there is a lot to chew on here. So again, 10-minute, just warning you up front, this is Elon for 10 minutes. Here we go.
So I think our letter says most of it, but I think we're going to spend extra time on Q&A and try to answer as many questions as possible. I think we should be able to answer. So we're going to go as long as there are good questions to answer. The thing I'm most excited about is the rapid increase in output. We've got just in the last 24 hours at the Gigafactory, we managed to achieve a sustained rate of over 3,000 packs per day. Per week, and actually reached a peak hour. With if extrapolated outward, would be a rate of over 5,000 cars per week. Obviously, you cannot take a peak hour and assume every hour is as good as the peak. But it's if you can achieve it even once in an hour, then with continued refinement of the system and improved operational uptime of the machinery, it means that you can achieve that sustained rate with more refinement. So you spend essentially a month or two improving the operational uptime, and the system as a whole will be able to do well over 5,000, I think. And what's interesting is that, at least in the case of pack production, we were able to do this with minimal capex. And I think in general, our understanding of production is improving dramatically, exponentially, in fact. And we're seeing ways to achieve improved volume with dramatically less capex. By simplifying the production line, by really engaging all of our associates, no matter how junior, in improving the way that parts are made. It's amazing how everybody's got good ideas, just needs to solicit those ideas and implement them. And then making ongoing design improvements so that when we discover that something is not well designed for manufacturing, that we would very quickly change that part design and introduce that into the flow. One of the things we've also found is that there's some things that are very well suited to manual operation and some things that are very well suited to automated operation. And the two should not be confused. So I should be clear that the vast majority of the Tesla production system is automated. However, as I mentioned in a tweet a few months ago, we did go too far on the automation front and automated some pretty silly things. One example would be we had this. This was a sort of ironically foolish. We had these fiberglass mats on the top of the battery pack. They're basically like they're basically fluff. So we try to automate the placement and bonding of fluff to the top of the battery pack, which is ridiculous. So we had FlufferBot, which was really an incredibly difficult machine to make work. Machines are not good at picking up pieces of fluff. Human hands are way better at doing that. So we had a super complicated machine using a vision system to try to put a piece of fluff on the battery pack. Then one of the questions asked was, do we actually need that? So we tested a car with and without, and found that there was no change in the noise volume in the cabin. So we actually had a part that was unnecessary, was for which the line kept breaking down because FlufferBot would frequently just fail to pick up the fluff or put it in like a random location. So that was one of the silliest things I found. We were also, and this still remains to be fixed, but in a lot of cases, but we were overgeneralizing the design. So, for example, the current battery pack has a port for the front drive units, which we then put a sealed blanking plate on. So essentially, we punch a hole in it, then put a blanking plate over the hole, and do that for all rear drive unit cars, which is kind of crazy. We've added cost, we've added a manufacturing step, we've added a failure mode, and for something that is unnecessary. So that is something that's an example of something that's changed. So anyway, the result is we've had a radical improvement in production. Battery pack production went from taking 7 hours to make a pack 3 weeks ago to under 17 minutes now. So just show that's like really radical improvements are indeed possible. We also saw enormous improvement in Zone 4 of module production. This, I should point out, is a fully automated zone, and we're able to also achieve a sustained rate of 3,000 vehicles a week. So we're actually slightly ahead in battery module and pack production than expected. With some work at the Fremont vehicle plant, primarily in the general assembly area, I'm confident we will very soon exceed the 3,000 mark in Fremont. So we're already there in the body shop, which is also almost entirely automated, where we weld up the body. They were already capable of over 3,000 cars a week. And then general assembly with some improvements, which will include reduction, at least I should say temporary reduction in automation in a few places. Then we should be over 3,000. So basically, I'm feeling really good about the Tesla production ramp for Model 3. And I'm very proud of the work that the team has done. It's been an amazing amount of hard work and sacrifice by some very talented people to achieve this outcome. It's worth noting you see a chart in the Model 3 market share versus competitors in mid-size premium sedans. We are almost the best-selling sedan in the United States in this category. And as of April, and we will certainly be there in May. And that's something really odd. I mean, be there in May and then and they'll really be there later this year. In the third quarter, it will. Right, I think that there's a good chance Model 3 gets maybe close to a majority market share of mid-sized premium sedans. 30 to 40% seems likely, and maybe a majority market share. Later this year. This is coming from a standing start against a lot of established brands who have far more sales outlets than we do. So this is very encouraging. See. Oh, and as the letter says, I'm feeling quite confident about achieving GAAP net income and positive cash flow in Q3. This is not, obviously a certainty, but it does appear quite likely in my view. We are going to conduct sort of a reorganization, restructuring of the company in this month, and make sure we're well set up to achieve that goal. In particular, the number of sort of third-party contracting companies that we're using has really gotten out of control. So we're going to, scrub the barnacles on that front. It's pretty crazy. We've got barnacles on barnacles. So there's going to be quite a lot of barnacle removal.
So to me, this is more or less just follow-up from that company-wide email that he sent out and, of course, leaked a couple weeks back that I covered here on the podcast. They're righting the ship, they're tightening the belt, and they are ramping up. It's glad to hear about the progress, although they're certainly still not really super close to knocking on the door of 5,000 cars per week just yet. Elon has told us time and time again that the ramp can be exponential, though, so that it can potentially go quickly. So, I mean, it feels like 5,000 cars per week is a long way away yet, but then again, a lot can happen in the next 2.5 months, which is when Elon says they hope to hit that 5,000 cars per week. All right, the next clip here is Elon talking about the hours, the sort of logistical efficiency of the factory.
Well, first of all, I think a 5-day 2-shift operation is a ridiculous way to operate, because that would be a very poor use of CapEx. Nor is it the way that we have operated in for most of Tesla. So the module production, cell module and battery pack production and powertrain production have always operated on a 24/7 basis, and the exception has been general assembly, which is operated on typically 2 to 3 shifts. Sort of a 5 to 6 day, 20-hour shift, and paint, which is operated on kind of a 6-day basis. I think it just makes sense to operate the whole company on the same basis. But a majority of Tesla production has operated on a 24/7 basis since we started production.
Yeah, I mean, this is JB. I could chime in.
Yeah.
As Elon said, it really makes great use of the CapEx in the lines, and that's why we did it starting way back with the beginning of S. But aligning everything to the same shift schedule makes it so much more efficient, because we don't have the seesaw of inventory, inter-line inventory between the different shops. So
exactly. One of the key things to improving the capital efficiency of the system is reducing work in process. And if you don't have, if the shifts are not aligned, then you have to build up inventory in kind of a storage warehouse, and then yeah, it's pretty foolish to actually operate on a 5-day 2-shift thing anyway. But it's this is sort of we're using the chip fab approach to capital efficiency. So it's called AWS. It's not Amazon Web Services. I'm not sure what it's called, but like there's something called alternate work, whatever. Alternate work week. Yeah. I think people work like three long days and then 4 long days alternately, something like that.
So multiple crews rather than just using overtime on weekends.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So it seems like just doing the math.
It's not like one person working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There are like 4 or 5 shifts.
Again, this goes back to the belt tightening and getting the company's act together from a capital efficiency perspective. You're going to hear Elon go on to say a lot more about the big picture of things later on this call in another clip I will play for you. But first, here is Elon speaking about, this is basically addressing the whole, hey, we went too fast on automation and undervalued humans. So here's him speaking a little more on that topic.
The number you're referring to is actually the general
vehicles
assembly
per minute. Yeah.
It's general assembly number, not other stuff.
You may have also not taken into account so-called OEE, or the actual uptime of the line, which tends to make the takt time a little faster than the perfect calculation.
Yeah, if they say that could take a minute, then that don't mean it's like over a 7-day, 24-hour work week. Like we could also just say, like, sure, we did, our peak pack production today was 32 packs in an hour. So we're under 2 minutes a pack and rising from there.
Yeah, and as Elon alluded, that the numbers go up rapidly as we go to the sub-assemblies that are in higher unit quantity per car.
Yeah.
So 4x per module, and then we have smaller sub-assemblies still that are factors of 10 or 20, even higher than that.
Yeah. However, that said, I do believe that the path to manufacturing efficiency is velocity and density, and that is absolutely what we'll be working on, rather than just trying to spend billions of dollars on duplicating a factory. If you can make if 2 companies are competing and one has to double its capex in order to double production, and the other one can with minor capex can just speed up the line by double, it's a game over.
Right, but in the meantime, the line's going to, I think what you're saying, some starts, some stops to get to the 5,000 per week.
Yeah, you can't have zero maintenance time and zero, you have to do equipment upgrades, you have to do, ongoing maintenance. So you can't just have it be operating at peak rate 24/7.
You heard co-founder and chief technology officer J.B. Straubel in on that as well. He actually will come up throughout this call, as will the CFO Deepak. Doug Field, I think, sneaks in for a quick minute as well at some point. But this, to me, is Elon saying that he still believes in automation and the alien dreadnought manufacturing process that he's talked about before, but that he wants to be smarter about it. And I think that's what the whole Flufferbot example was all about, and that goes back to the classic line from Jurassic Park.
Yeah, but your scientists were so whether or not they didn't stop to think if they should.
All right, we all know that the battery packs are the most cost-significant component of any electric vehicle. The Gigafactory, in large part, is designed not only to enable Tesla to produce electric cars at volume, but in turn also to get the cost of that battery pack down, the cost per kilowatt hour down. So here is Deepak and Elon speaking about that topic.
That's something, every data point, Rod, that we look at internally suggests that we are best in class, but we don't.
Best, which is not a class.
Yes, we're the best. Sorry.
We're the best in a class of one. No.
Yeah. I think directionally, Rod, it's helpful to understand the different commodities and the trends that we're pursuing in the batteries. Being on a path to reduce cobalt usage, for instance, has been something we've been working on for literally several years now, and this has been extremely helpful in the overall cost per kilowatt hour. Especially with recent commodity price movements. So I think we can't really be quantitative, but that directionally is a pretty good trend.
Yeah, we think we can get the cobalt to almost nothing.
Well, I think this is the Tesla executive team basically laughing off any competition in this specific category, meaning cost per kilowatt hour. And at this point in time, quite frankly, who can blame them? No one else is even close, because no one else is even close to producing the kinds of batteries at the volume that Tesla is doing. All right. Does capital raising, does Tesla need more money? That's been a big argument of the short sellers, of some other financial analysts. Tesla is going to need money. They're burning through cash. So what about it, Elon Musk?
Thanks, Elon. So you repeatedly said, I think in recent weeks, that you do not need to issue equity capital at Tesla. And I think many investors on this call would say it's better to raise capital when you don't need to. So I guess the first question is, yeah, you may not need to, but do you want to?
No. I specifically don't want to.
And here, I think, is where Elon starts to get annoyed and or lose patience with this sort of line of questioning. And hold this thought, because it's going to come back into play here very shortly. But first, Elon Musk asked whether or not they could take advantage of SpaceX, leverage SpaceX with Tesla with regard to high-speed internet, because SpaceX is planning to launch a high-speed internet satellite cluster up into orbit in the not-too-distant future. So here's Elon on that.
I mean, it might be. There's lots of interesting things you could do. Car's got a lot of computing power and is connected, to the cell networks and Wi-Fi and everything. And we could certainly connect it to a LEO internet constellation. I haven't really thought about it, but probably there is.
Note that he says probably at the end of that otherwise, pretty much a brush-off statement otherwise, but and maybe not a brush-off, but it's fair to say that it was a bit of a non-statement. So, I mean, could Tesla maybe stop paying AT&T at some point to connect all the cars to the internet and to the Tesla mothership and use SpaceX's internet satellites instead? It's, as Elon says, it's possible. I think, why not? If SpaceX can get the logistics, get the infrastructure up there, it might make a lot of sense to just go ahead and let Tesla use it. If the scale works, if you can have all these, what will be at some point in the not too distant future, millions of cars connecting to it and pinging it at all times. All right, Elon next speaking about the bottlenecks of Model 3 production, I should say. And he gets pretty specific about exactly where those bottlenecks are. So here we go.
The Tesla production system at this point is vast. So, and we literally have the two biggest factories on Earth, between the Gigafactory and Fremont. Giga's still slightly smaller than Fremont. I think, maybe slightly smaller footprint, but it'll soon be bigger than Fremont. And Fremont's like the second biggest building of any kind by footprint. So it's just like this. It is a vast. The full answer to that question is a complex one. I feel very confident about our ability to get to 5K, very soon, sustained rate at Giga, essentially getting to 5,000 battery packs and motors and drive, power inverters and chargers and that kind of thing, which is all done at Giga by the end of next month. Body production, no problem. General assembly is probably our biggest risk, and I'm going to be focusing personally on that a lot in this coming month. And then our paint shop is maybe the second biggest risk after general assembly. But these are all quite manageable. It's not like huge brain surgery to get these things right. It's a lot of work. Like I said, it's a lot of time and hard work. But it's very doable, and it's really quite straightforward. It's not like a fundamental impediment here.
In many cases, we've seen huge gains through software that's in the car, software that controls the automation and connects to our central systems. So in many cases, it's not even hardware upgrades that create substantial increases in velocity.
Yeah, exactly. Doug makes a good point here. And I think that is that the production, a really great production system is primarily a software problem. And there's no one in the auto industry that is remotely as good as Tesla at software as Tesla. Tesla is way better at software than any other car company. So if it is what I'm saying is true, that the biggest challenge in a production system is software, we are in a good position.
And so here we learn where Elon's focus is going. We heard from the shareholder letter that the battery pack assembly bottleneck, the module at the Gigafactory, was resolved. So here now is where Elon is choosing his next point of focus. He tweeted out again on late in the week that he slept at the factory again. So he is in Fremont. He is working very hard along with the rest of the team. So good to see him sort of move down the pipeline to the next big bottleneck. All right, how about a little Model Y? It's come up on the last one or two conference calls. Elon specifically seems eager to start talking about it. So let's let him do it. Here's Elon Musk talking a little Model Y.
It will only start to become significant in 2019.
Okay, so all of the CapEx spend for this year is associated with Fremont Model 3 Gigafactory. No,
please take me literally. I said it will only start to become significant next year. It's not zero right now, but it's not a big number. But it's not a big number relative to our revenue.
And in the early days of product development, anyway, there's not much CapEx. CapEx comes much later as you've committed to equipment, and equipment starts to come in-house.
Yeah, although it is remarkable, although the amount of money spent in the beginning is really quite low at the beginning of the development program, decisions made at the beginning of the development program have massive implications for future CapEx. So it is better to spend a bit more time making the right design decisions and really thinking through the producibility of a product before racing ahead with CapEx decisions. There's no question we could have made the Model 3 much easier to produce than we have. Model Y, I think Model Y is going to be a manufacturing revolution. It will be, I think, incredible from a manufacturing standpoint, because we do not want to go through this pain again.
There he was talking about spending for Model Y. And Model Y came up a few times on this call, as you're going to hear. This was the first time. Elon's already been talking up this car from a manufacturing perspective. And honestly, I think he should be careful to not hype it up anymore for investors or anyone else, quite frankly, because I feel like it's, especially at this point, still trying to get over the Model 3 hump. It's better to under-promise and over-deliver with Model Y, whether it's on the product itself or the manufacturing efficiency of it and the actual process of building it. Because, this is the car. This is the next most important project that Tesla's going to move on to after the Model 3 flattens out at a productive place, in a productive place. So I just feel like, I like that he's excited, but maybe just tamp it down a little bit for now until, just to avoid expectations getting out of hand with it. All right, speaking of getting out of hand, here's where the call starts to get a little interesting. I'm just going to play the clip if you haven't heard this already, so you'll just get the fun part pretty organically. If you already heard about this, you know what's coming. But here's the next one of the callers who was queued up, and they went to him. And here is that exchange with Elon Musk.
And so where specifically will you be in terms of...
You're
capital
next.
requirement.
Next. Boring bonehead questions are not cool. Next.
And here is where Elon Musk shocked everyone on the call. I at least I presume so. I mean, I felt like you could sense everyone kind of going, "What just happened?" I mean, I can't imagine that these Wall Street analysts that are usually on these calls are used to being cut off and shut down like that. I'm not saying they're egotistical, like, oh, they're, I can't, how dare you talk over me, nothing like that. I'm literally saying that in the course of their jobs, where they're on calls with CEOs of companies that they invest in, they probably don't get the talk to the hand treatment, especially publicly like this, very often, if ever. I mean, Elon Musk apparently has a breaking point on CapEx and other certain businessy questions that he's been asked a million times, and we just found it. But this story is not done. We fast forward just a little bit further in the call, and this happens.
We're going to go to YouTube. Sorry, these questions are so dry. They're killing me.
Well, looks like Elon Musk won't be getting any Christmas cards from Wall Street investors anytime soon. Not sure he would have anyway. I'm not sure he's the most beloved guy on Wall Street. And I'll tell you, I may have an unpopular take on this, and I have to say, so I wrote all my notes to this when I went through, listened to all this. I did it on Wednesday night after the call. And so all my thoughts here were, I was forming them after the call, and Elon sent some follow-up tweets to this on Friday, which I'll get to in a minute. But, my take here, and again, you may disagree with me, and that's okay. It's good to we never want to agree with everyone all the time. It's good, so if you have a different take on this, totally respect that. But I confess, I have to say here, many Tesla fans I saw on Twitter afterwards, message boards cheering him on. Yeah, you tell him, Elon. The more I thought about this, the more I thought it was kind of rude, honestly. I mean, while you may disagree with that analyst's positions or their approaches to their jobs, these analysts, these people, they are trying to do just that, their jobs. It's not like the questions being asked were inappropriate or offensive in any way. They were just, as Elon put it, boring. Or maybe, they were questions that Elon didn't like for one reason or another, which I'll get to in a second. I just think it's, as a human being, it's rude to cut someone off like that, especially in that context. I don't think that person deserved it. And I'll tell you, Wall Street did not respond kindly to that, as you might have expected. The stock took an immediate hit. Now, this was after hours, but the stock is still tracked after hours for a while there. It took an immediate hit, which did carry over to the next day. The stock fell by about $20 into the next day. Maybe it would have anyway. It's hard to know. We'll never know, in fact. But because giving a little ammo to that theory that there was a little bit of a vindictive share hit that took place, Tesla did beat Wall Street's expectations for Q1, which usually is good news for the stock, or at least for Teslas. Again, I'm not an expert on stock, but I do keep an eye on Teslas, and I have been watching it for a long time, and that is typically what happens when they beat Wall Street expectations. The stock goes up, not necessarily a ton, but usually it does go up. It doesn't usually take a $20 hit, so there's a little room to suggest that it was somewhat of a vindictive thing here in response to Elon Musk's behavior there. Now, again, Elon did take to Twitter to address this 2 days later. This was on Friday, and he says this: "The two questioners I ignored on the Q1 call are sell-side analysts who represent a short seller thesis, not investors. The reason the Bernstein question about CapEx, which was the first one, the reason the Bernstein question about CapEx was boneheaded was that it had already been answered in the headline of the Q1 newsletter he received beforehand, along with details in the body of the letter. The reason RBC question, that's the second one, about Model 3 demand is absurd is that Tesla has roughly 500,000 reservations despite no advertising and no cars in showrooms. Even after reaching 5,000 per week production, it would take 2 years just to satisfy existing demand, even if new sales dropped to zero. So then, of course, many people reply to this. Of course, he's got 20 million followers, more than that. So he's going to get feedback. And now the thing I've said this before, the thing I love about Elon is for somebody with that big of a social media following, a lot of people with followings that large, they use Twitter for one-way communication. They put their message out there and they never engage with anyone. Well, of course, Elon always engages with people. He's always replying to people, jumping in on conversations and replying to replies of his own comments. And that happened here. Someone jumped in with what I feel is a great point. They said, if you know their negative angle beforehand, just block them in the queue so you never have to hear such questions live. Problem solved. And yes, that would have been the solution. Those calls are all, they're not screened necessarily. I don't think the actual questions are screened, but the people are. When I've been on those calls before, I've tried to, they're never going to take a media person's call, or let alone a fanboy podcaster's call. But you go in there and you press, it's like a web interface, and you like press a button to go into the queue. Say it's a virtual raising your hand button that they have. And you have to put in your name and who you are and where you're from when you log into that call. So they at least know, like, okay, so these guys from these short sellers, they did know who they were before they were called upon. So, and I'm not sure who actually makes the decision on which callers to take. If that's a PR guy that's on the call, that would be my guess, but I don't actually know for sure. Anyway, so that was one Twitter user's comment on that, and Elon replied to that person saying, true. And once they were on the call, I should have answered their questions live. It was foolish of me to ignore them. So he doesn't outright apologize, but he does seem to be acknowledging that he was wrong, walking back his behavior a little bit there. And I like to see that. I mean, again, you may feel he was not in the wrong and that there's no apology necessary. I do feel that it was rude, and Elon certainly acknowledges there that maybe he should have handled that a little bit differently. But wild times on the Q1 conference call. And here's the thing, the call kept going. That was the middle of the call. That was like almost exactly the middle of the call when all this happened. There's still a long way to go. There's still a lot of ground to cover. So now the YouTuber that Elon referenced earlier, the person representing retail investors, came on and actually got to ask a bunch of questions. Elon just kept going to him because he was already in this point where he was annoyed, and so he liked this guy. He liked the questions, and the first comment here, the first question that this gentleman asked that Elon talked about was an update on the Tesla network. Of course, Tesla's proposed and planned autonomous ride-sharing fleet. So here is an update on the Tesla network.
So, I mean, thank you for an interesting question. The long-term goal, where things are obviously evolving towards, is a shared electric autonomy model. So, in order for this to obviously, for the whole sort of system to work, you need all the pieces in place. You need to have full autonomy, level 4 or 5, what do you want to call it? And obviously a lot of cars on the road, and then build the software infrastructure behind that to enable shared autonomy, so to enable people to share their cars and be able to offer their cars as effectively kind of a robo-Lyft or robo-Uber. It's sort of like a combination of, like, I guess, Uber, Lyft, and Airbnb type of thing, where you can own your car and have 100% usage of autonomous electric car. You can say it's available generally to anyone who wants to use it. When you're not using it, you can recall it at will. You can restrict usage to only friends and family or only users who are 5-star. This is like the obvious thing that's going to happen. But in order for that to be in place, we have to obviously solve full autonomy. We're making really good progress on that front. I believe that the current production of the vehicles that we're currently producing are capable of full autonomy. With the only thing that would really be might be needed, or maybe is probably needed, is a computer upgrade to have more processing power for the vision neural net. But that's a plug-in replacement, a thing that can be done quite easily. So I think we're really well positioned and are building the foundation for having millions, ultimately tens of millions of shared autonomous electric vehicles, which you can, like I said, decide not to share if you don't want to. And then in places,
and specifically on the timing, the timing though, do you have any details about, or when we could even expect to learn more about the timing of this service?
Well, the hardest thing to predict about the timing is regulatory approval. The thing that's tricky with autonomous vehicles is that autonomy doesn't reduce the accident rate or fatality rate to zero. It improves it substantially, but the reality is that even though we think autonomy, even the current autonomy reduces the probability of a death by 50%, which would be incredible, because if applied broadly, there's over 1 million, I think 1.2 million automotive deaths per year. And how many do you read about? Basically, none of them. However, but if it's an autonomous situation, it's headline news. And the media fails to mention that actually they shouldn't really be writing the story. They should be writing a story about how autonomous cars are really safe, but that's not the story that people want to click on. So they write inflammatory headlines that are fundamentally misleading to the readers. That's really outrageous. So, and this would be true even if electric cars if autonomous cars were 10 times safer, so that instead of 1 million deaths, you had 100,000 deaths. There's still going to be, people who will still sue and say, hey, you're responsible for the death here. And it's like, well, the 90% of people who didn't die are not suing. They're still alive. They just don't know it. So we got to deal with that, and then obviously regulators respond to public pressure and the press. So if the press is hounding the regulators and the public is laboring on misapprehension that autonomy is less safe because of misleading press, then this is where I find the challenge of predicting it to be very difficult. It's really incredibly irresponsible of any journalist with integrity to write an article that would lead people to believe that Tesla autonomy is less safe, because people might actually turn it off and then die. So anyway, I'm really upset by this.
Really interesting answer. Thank you.
But I can also say from a technical standpoint, I think we'll probably be ready by the end of next year.
As you heard, Elon, without prompting, chose to address the coverage of the fatal Model X autopilot crash here. And it seems like he's bracing all of us for a long regulatory battle to get level 4 full self-driving approved by legislators once the technology is actually physically ready. But he says he thinks level 4 might be ready in about 18 months. That's huge news. The other highly significant piece of news there is that Elon is now saying that apparently Autopilot 2.0 is not good enough for full self-driving, and that an upgrade to at least 2.5, which is the one that's shipping in Model 3s and all new Teslas, so all the recent S's and X's, that's probably going to be required. At least that was how I interpreted that. I thought that was pretty clear. Now, remember that you should not have to pay for that if you've prepaid for the full self-driving package. And for everyone else, it's going to be interesting to see if the $4,000 post-delivery price to enable full self-driving stands, and then if that would include the hardware upgrade, or if Tesla might raise that price. Now, remember that the upgrade is, we've been told it's a very, very simple upgrade from an installation perspective for the labor. It's the board, the CPU, that processing unit is right behind the passenger glove box. So I would think that most of that $4,000 post-delivery price is most likely pure profit. I can't imagine Tesla's cost on the CPU, the GPU, the processing power itself. Maybe it's $1,000 board, even at their cost, maybe. So there may very well even be less than that. I mean, a high-end GPU for gaming is, $600 or something. So if installation labor costs are pretty minimal on that, which that's how they've set it up so that it's easy for them to swap in and upgrade if they need to, that means that money is almost all gravy for Tesla. So big news there. I wonder if that will sway any of you, including me, any of us upcoming Model 3 buyers into going ahead and prepaying for the full self-driving at $3,000 before delivery rather than paying the $4,000 after delivery. It's more food for thought for all of us. Okay, back to Model Y. Where's it going to be built? Let's talk about that. This is in reference to that Reuters report that it would be starting, that they had quoted a couple of part supplier sources that were saying that the production was planned to start in Fremont in the fall of 2019. Here's Elon Musk responding to that.
The Reuters report is based on nothing. I don't know where that came from. We will not be starting production of the Model Y at the end of next year. I would say it's probably closer to 24 months from now. So 2020 is a more likely prospect for Model Y. Early 2020. And the production location for Model Y has not been decided. We're really crowded here at Fremont. I don't know where we put the Model Y production. So it's difficult to imagine that. We just could not fit the Model Y production at Fremont. We're jammed to the gills here. So one thing I know for sure is not here. It is crazy packed, and we'll try to figure out what the optimal location is for Model Y production, but it's not here. Not here at Fremont.
So this directly refutes the Reuters report, which makes sense, because I had said in response to that story when I did it here on the show that I have no idea where they'd put the line. And apparently there is indeed no room. So could it be at the Gigafactory maybe? Stay tuned for more on that later in the call. For now, though, here's Elon getting a little frisky again. A caller, or the same guy, actually I should say, the same YouTube guy, brings up some comments about the Tesla Semi from the CEO of Daimler's semi-truck unit, and here's that exchange.
Okay, and I'm not an expert in battery pack technology, but it seems that a lot of people are speculating that the specs for the semi-truck, even I believe the CEO of Daimler said it breaks the laws of physics. So I'm wondering, is this just a linear...
He doesn't know much about physics. I know him. I'd be happy to engage in a physics discussion with him. I actually studied physics in college.
Well, Elon was in quite the saucy mood that day. I mean, his lack of media training greatly pleases and entertains me. I mean, most of the time. Again, I do think he was a little rude earlier, but in general, I think that's what I love about him. Most CEOs might think that if they were in Elon's position, like that thought would go through their head of like, oh man, no, that guy's totally wrong. He knows nothing about physics. But their PR people would have made them go through hours and hours of media training sessions to make sure that they never actually said that. Elon, of course, just says it. And I love it. Of course, sometimes that results in not something a little unpleasant like earlier. But as I've always said, that is the thing with Elon. We love him, but he's human. He's not perfect. But his passion and his candor usually serve him very well. And I thought that particular exchange was pretty hilarious. Now, while we're on the subject of the semi-truck, Elon Musk wasn't done. He's got some high hopes for the semi-truck. Here's Elon on that.
Even if we didn't improve our battery technology at all, we could achieve a 500-mile range truck. At all. We're going to do better than 500 miles.
Yeah, this is JB. I think the key point is it doesn't require some dramatic breakthrough. There's a fundamental misunderstanding, I think, of what the current technology in our existing products can actually do.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just the misunderstanding of sort of the current status of the technology versus others in the industry. That could be where some of that's coming from. If they're benchmarking sort of the best battery pack they can buy, from a supplier, and then mapping that to what the semi could do, it doesn't solve.
Right.
So I think that's maybe where some of it's coming from. But we basically have what we need in house and understand how to do those specs today, or better, as Elon said.
We could do a 500-mile range semi today. I think the actual production unit will be above 600-mile range.
Even a 550-mile range on the semi would be awesome if it happens to turn out that way, because it would be exactly what I was talking about earlier with Model Y, which would be under-promising and over-delivering. 550, if they ended up getting to that would be 10% better than what they originally announced. If they actually get to 600, like Elon's talking about, that's 20% better than what they originally announced and what the reservation holders put their money down expecting. So that's pretty awesome. I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all that they can already do this with meaning the 500 miles with their existing battery tech, because remember it's been a couple years at this point, but a while back, Elon had said that they could build a 400-mile Model S right then and there at that time if they had actually wanted to. So no surprise at all that the semi is looking great in the specs department. It's awesome to hear that. But what about supercharging? While we're out on the road, you get the semis are out on the road. What about when we're out on the road? We want to get our cars charged as quickly as possible. So the same caller that's still giving questions to Elon continues to engage with him. He asks about Porsche. And hey, what about Porsche's whole 350 kilowatt charging? What do you say to that, Elon Musk?
Awesome. Great stuff. So I'm also wondering, are you guys going to let Porsche beat you to market with a 350 kilowatt hour supercharger? Because I know you mentioned, V3.
We'll keep going if the questions are not boring.
I can keep going. So
it's cool.
Yeah, so the 350 kilowatt, the 350 kilowatt charger from Porsche, they mentioned they're rolling that out. On the last call, JB seemed to indicate that you guys were sort of going to keep the status quo with your supercharger technology, but Elon, I know you've mentioned that there is a V3 supercharger, so I'm just trying to get some clarity on whether you will be improving your supercharger technology or not, and if there is a V3.
Oh, we're definitely going to be improving our supercharged technology. The thing about a 350 kilowatt charger is it doesn't actually make a ton of sense unless you've got a monster battery pack or have a crazy high C rate, in which case your energy density is going to be poor. So it's kind of cockamamie. We think maybe 200 on a per car. Also, I don't know if they meant 350 kilowatts for a single car, that's really pretty. You're gonna frag the battery pack if you do that. There's no you cannot charge a high energy battery pack at that rate unless it's a very high kilowatt hour battery pack. So something along the I think I don't know, JB, like a couple hundred, 200, 250, maybe.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely sort of power level that we've discussed and explored, and some of it also comes down to an optimization around utility versus cost and trade-offs in the car itself. You kind of hinted at that, Elon, but there is a trade-off fundamentally between charge speed and essentially range or cost of battery.
Yeah.
And we look at that pretty carefully. We understand the trade-off, and we could design cells in a pack that could charge at faster than 300, 400 kilowatts, but it's not a very useful trade-off to the customer. That's
most people don't understand the difference between energy and power, even really.
Yeah.
Energy, obviously energy is essentially amounts to range, and then power is kind of like your peak acceleration, basically. The rate at which you consume energy. So, really, it's more important to have. It's more important to have long range than it is to have a super fast charge time. And you can sort of think about this in the devices that you use. Like, would you rather have a cell phone that lasted 2 hours but it could charge in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, let's say, but it only lasted 2 hours? Or you'd like a cell phone that lasts 2 days and maybe it takes an hour to charge?
A really interesting explanation, and I thought a great analogy about the cell phone there. It still begs the question, though, of when we might see that 200 or 250 kilowatt supercharging that Elon and JB mentioned there actually start to roll out. They didn't say anything about timing, so we'll see. It's probably not their highest priority right now. I mean, they've been very upfront that Model 3 production is like priorities 1 through 10, and then everything else is 11 onwards. And by the way, I just want to go ahead and give credit. The name of the quote unquote YouTuber that Elon had mentioned there and has been engaged with him on these questions, the not boring guy, as Elon noted, his name's Galileo Russell. So I think he did a pretty good job. I mean, he came prepared with questions. That were evidently, he said they had been crowdsourced from other retail investors, and he spoke well. He wasn't intimidated. He wasn't nervous. I thought he did a very good job. So Galileo, shout out to you. All right, we are not done. Galileo's not done. What about sharing the supercharging network with other automakers? It's been something that's been mentioned multiple times in the past. We haven't heard anything about it in a while. So, Elon, what do you say?
We've always said that this is not intended to be a walled garden, and we're happy to support other automakers and let them use our supercharger stations. They would just need to pay, share the costs proportionate to their vehicle usage, and they would need to be able to accept our charge rate, or at least and our connector, or at least have an adapter to our connector. So this is something we're very open to, but so far none of the other car makers have wanted to do this. But it's like not because of opposition from us. This is not a walled garden, trying to make a moat bullshit.
Well, it makes sense that no one else has approached Tesla on this, I think, for 2 reasons. One, because almost no one else is making and taking long-range electric vehicles seriously. And 2, quite frankly, hubris. Call it pride. Call it whatever you want. Tesla is the upstart kid on the block to whom not one of the existing legacy automakers wants to admit defeat to in even the smallest of ways. To them, it would no doubt look bad if they signed on to use the superchargers at all in any capacity, because it might make them look weak to their shareholders or to their consumers or what have you. They might worry that it would be free promotion for Tesla. But you know who would be great for? Consumers of those other vehicles. That would be great for them. and thus for the electrification movement overall. So we'll see. We'll see if anything happens on that. But Tesla just it's good to hear that they continue to be open to that. But other companies need to pick up the phone. All right. Doubling back to the Tesla Semi for a moment, Elon is asked about reservations. How many reservations does the Semi have? And if you listen closely here, J.B. Straubel says it. And then it's kind of, they don't really acknowledge it again, but I think we get the number. Take a listen to this.
I actually don't know how many reservations we have for the Semi. I don't think...
2,000.
About 2,000? Okay. I mean, we haven't really tried to sell the Semi. It's not like there's like an ongoing sales effort. So, sales orders for the Semi are like opportunistic. Really, companies approaching us. It's just not something we really think about much. Our focus is on the Model 3. We need to get that to about 5,000 a week at a good margin. We need to become a profitable company. That is a good criticism that has been leveled at Tesla. An accurate one is high time we became profitable. And the truth is, like, you're not a real company until you are, frankly. So that's our focus right now. And we've got an awesome product roadmap. The Tesla Semi is one of those things. I think we've got a really good idea for the Model Y is going to be amazing. I'm really excited about that. Tesla Pickup's going to be great. The product roadmap, I mean, we have like way more cool things than we know what to do. Like, the idea generation far exceeds the ability to execute it. So we just need to stay focused and not divide our attention on too many products at one time.
Again, I feel like Elon should just check his excitement for Model Y a little bit for his sake. I love that he's excited and he's not afraid to talk about it, but he knows that those comments are going to be headlines when the focus needs to publicly stay on Model 3. As for the Semi, again, unless I'm crazy, you can pretty clearly hear JB say, kind of in the background there, that they have about 2,000 reservations so far for the Tesla Semi, which means the few hundred that we've heard about publicly pale in comparison to the ones that we haven't heard about. So 2,000 semis at an average selling price of about $170,000. Again, sort of splitting the difference between the base model and the 500-mile or maybe 600-mile range edition. That's about $340 million worth of total orders, which is absolutely fantastic. That's awesome. All right, 3 more clips for you here. We are, if you're getting tired, we are getting towards the end. I'll tell you, there's always a lot of ground to cover on these quarterly earnings calls, this one especially so. Here's Elon again talking about a little Model Y, but also the Tesla factory in China. Remember, we did the big story about China kind of clearing the way, the Chinese government clearing the way for Tesla to build their own factory, wholly owned Tesla factory in China. So here's Elon on that.
So that's probably later this year. It has to be later this year. So I'm not sure of an exact time, but I don't know, maybe next quarter, but not later than fourth quarter for Model Y. And then we also expect to announce the location of a Tesla Gigafactory in China soon.
And will that second factory, when you announce it, will it be in North America, or is that going to be in China?
Well, I just said it's in China.
So the Gigafactory is there, but the second manufacturing plant will be in China as well?
Sorry. Oh, I mean, yeah. So, sorry. In the future, all Gigafactories will include vehicle production. So right now we've got vehicle production and battery production. Like battery production and motor and power electronics and charger production are at Giga, and then we've got our Fremont car factory. But future Gigafactories will all incorporate vehicle production. excited by the fact, like we're very appreciative of the fact that the government of China has announced that they will be allowing full ownership of manufacturing facilities in China, which let's express a word of appreciation to the Chinese government in that regard.
So at the beginning of that he was talking about making the decision about where to produce Model Y will happen later this year, probably in Q3. So this is what leads me to believe that Model Y may in fact be built at the Gigafactory, along with, as a Ride the Lightning hotline caller had suggested a week or two back, I think it makes a lot of sense that the Tesla Semi might be built at the Gigafactory as well. I mean, it would seem to make a lot of sense given what Elon just said right there in that clip. And we already know that the China Gigafactory is probably in Shanghai. That has already been serious whispers about that. So I guess we'll find out for sure in about 6 months or so on that one. All right, our penultimate call. I love that word. I like using it whenever I can. I always love penultimate, second to last. It's a very fun word. Anyway, this is Elon speaking about the consumer usage and consumer confidence in autopilot in the wake of the recent fatal Model X accident. So here he is speaking to that.
We do see a steady increase in the percentage of miles driven with using autopilot. So as we roll out more functionality, as we make it better, we see a steady increase. I think it's something for cars equipped with autopilot, something on the order of a third of highway miles, maybe a half in some cases in some regions are on autopilot. But then of course, when there's like negative news in the press, then that dips. And then I was like, okay, this is not good because people are reading things in the press that cause them to use autopilot less, and then that makes it dangerous for our customers, and that's not cool. That's why I get upset. And then we get accused of blaming the victim. I was like, look, we're not blaming the victim here, but it is important that people not be under the wrong impression. The statistics are unequivocal that autopilot improves safety. No question. In fact, one thing I was going to mention, almost forgot to mention, is that we'll be publishing our safety statistics on a quarterly basis.
Wonderful.
So that people know exactly what autopilot safety is. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? And it's like one of the common misimpressions is that when there is, say, a serious accident on autopilot, people, for some reason, think that, or some of the articles think that it's because the driver thought the car was fully autonomous and it wasn't, and we somehow misled them into thinking it was fully autonomous. It is the opposite case. When there is a serious accident, it is almost always, in fact, maybe always, the case that it is an experienced user. And the issue is more one of complacency. Like they get too used to it. That tends to be more of an issue. It's not a lack of understanding of what autopilot can do. It's actually thinking they know more about autopilot than they do. Like quite a significant understanding of it.
I think this is a good reminder for all of us. If you're listening to this, you are a Tesla superfan, like me. And that means when you get your car, you are going to know a lot about autopilot and how it works. And that means that you're predisposed, as I am, to falling into that experienced sort of expert user category that Elon talked about, where the very people that are most prone, most susceptible to that complacency that he mentioned that can be dangerous. So we all have to remember that the system isn't perfect, and we can't get complacent with it. That it's an important safety reminder for all of us. So I thought that was an interesting clip to play. Now, how are we going to go out? How are we ending this? Well, here's Elon giving one last heave-ho verbally speaking, to short sellers. The caller here clearly, he was extremely respectful. He's very professional. Here's Elon talking day traders.
Tesla's such a leaky sieve of information that I think the news will leak pretty quickly. And also people track registrations very closely. So at most, any information that we provide would be a week or two in advance of what will become public knowledge, just due to vehicle registrations and shipments that are tracked very carefully. So the problem is, like, people get too focused on like what's happening in the space of a few weeks or a few months. This is it's an old maxim of investing. You should not be focused on short-term things. You should be focused on long-term things. And we have no interest. We have no interest in satisfying the desires of day traders. Like, I couldn't care less. Please sell our stock and don't buy it.
I completely understand your frustrations, and I'm frustrated too on how myopic we are right now. They also say that great years are made out of quarters, and great decades are made out of years. So everyone's short-term focused in some ways, and volatility has a way of shaking people out, even that are strong and want to be there. And so, and anything you can do to help in the near term on that, I think is helpful for the stock. That's it.
I think that if people are concerned about volatility, they should definitely not buy our stock. I am not here to convince you to buy our stock. Do not buy it if volatility is scary. There you go.
So Elon trying to ward off the shorts here, and he's not wrong. Tesla stock is volatile. Most shorts have been burned badly by Tesla over the years. I mean, it's not my expertise, absolutely not. But if you're out there looking to make a quick buck, I would think that Elon Musk, being so unlike any other company leader, is probably the wrong guy to try and make that quick buck off of. Because he's unpredictable. I would think that any other company run by a more predictable CEO might literally be a better bet for a short. And in fact, Elon on that Friday where he was tweeting that sort of again, not an apology, but just walking back his actions a little bit on that call. He did, though, add, he went out like this saying, quote, "Oh, and a short burn of the century coming soon. Flamethrowers should arrive just in time." So he clearly, he doesn't like the fact that Tesla is the most shorted stock out there, because it means, there's all these sort of traditional financiers that they're in effect rooting for Tesla to do badly, rooting for them to fail, which, I personally don't understand. I know it's a way of life. It's like a business thing. You probably have to be pretty, you have to take emotion out of it, and you're just looking at numbers and trying to figure out, okay, who's not going to make money, who's not going to do well. I can bet against that. But boy, the mission of Tesla, I could never be a short seller, because I don't think I could ever take my emotion out of it. I mean, when I look at Tesla, it's like, why would I bet against, even if I didn't like the cars? Let's say I thought, you know what, they're ugly cars. I don't want to have to stop to charge on a road trip. I'm just going to keep buying gas cars. But I just couldn't bet against that mission of trying to bring electric vehicles into the mainstream and make them better and make them a viable or in fact superior alternative to gasoline-powered cars. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to bet against that, just on a sort of emotional level. But anyway, there it is. That's the Q1 conference call, aka Mr. Musk's wild ride. It was a crazy one this time. And before I let you go this week, I know this has already been an extremely long show, as I thought it would be at the top. There is one more piece of news that I wanted to pass along rather than wait till next week, and it is this. It comes by way of Electrek, who obtained a copy of the document that I'm about to tell you about. Tesla has settled a class action lawsuit that was filed by a group of Tesla owners who have early Autopilot 2 cars. And those customers felt that Tesla was not holding up their end of the bargain with regard to the release of enhanced Autopilot features. So those people, who I'll tell you about, I'll give you the window in just a second here, they're going to be partially reimbursed for their $5,000 enhanced Autopilot purchase if the settlement is approved by a court, and I would expect that it will be at this point. So again, Electrek obtaining a copy of that settlement agreement, they say that quote, Tesla will pay between $20 and $280 to all U.S. Tesla owners who bought or leased cars with enhanced Autopilot between October of 2016, which is when Autopilot 2 rolled out, and September of 2017. So that indeed covers that early stretch, that first year of Autopilot 2. And remember that early stretch in particular was when Autopilot basically didn't work for a pretty good chunk of that time. AP1 still did on the 2014 and 2015 cars, but the Autopilot 2, where Tesla had to start from scratch because of the messy divorce with Mobileye, there was no Autopilot functionality for a while, and when it did finally come back online, it was very gradually brought up to par, and they're still, very much working on it, as we all know. They've come a long, long way since, but what's interesting here to me, ultimately, we're not talking about a lot of money. Between $20 and $280 is, at most, that's just over 5% of the purchase price of enhanced Autopilot. But still, it's interesting to me that Tesla chose not to fight this, because the settlement really says to me, in my opinion, it's something of an admission of, yes, we haven't delivered on what we said we would, and obviously they haven't. There are no enhanced Autopilot features to date. We're pretty much at the point now where we're just on par with Autopilot 1. In some ways, maybe a little better from everything I read, but it's still, the actual enhanced Autopilot stuff, which is more or less kind of level 3 Autopilot stuff, level 3 self-driving rather. We haven't seen any of that as of yet, but Tesla, they did cover all their bases from a legal perspective with the verbiage on their website when you order the car. Of course, if you've ordered a Tesla, you know this. But I do look at this as something of an apology on Tesla's part. And it also lays the groundwork for frustrated owners to potentially do something like this again. If there's no movement on full self-driving for a while, and you've got a lot of folks that have paid the $3,000 upfront cost for that, I wonder if people might look at this if there's no movement on full self-driving for a while and go, hey, maybe we should try this class action thing again. It got us something last time. So stay tuned for that. We'll see what happens. Oh my goodness, that was quite a a segment there, quite a meat of the show this week. So hang with me. I'm going to take a quick little musical interlude of about 5 seconds, and I will be right back with you with some parting thoughts and to wrap up the show right after this. Whew, big show this week. Hope you enjoyed that. I do have a lot of fun putting those together. I mean, it's the most work. It's a lot more work than the regular weekly show is, but I always like having those out in the wild because, again, it's probably the closest I'm ever going to come to having Elon Musk on this podcast. It's just clips of his voice to make it kind of sound like he's on here, but I mean, hey, you never know. But yeah, a lot goes into these episodes. Hope you enjoy them. If you want to support the podcast, I put these out every Sunday. If you were interested in supporting it beyond simply listening, which again I very much appreciate, that's all you have to do. But there is an optional layer of support if you did want to consider it, and that is Patreon. I do have a Patreon page for this podcast. You can find it at patreon.com/Tesla podcast. That's Patreon. That's how you spell Patreon. And there's information there. There's a little video of me and all the different little tiers and things you can get for supporting the podcast. So it's totally optional, of course, it always is, but if you do appreciate what I do here each and every week and you wanted to express that in a monetary form, Patreon is the way to do that. And in fact, let me say a special thank you to the group of Patreon producers. These are the folks who pledge at the $20 level or higher each and every month. And for that, they get the shout out along with a few other things each and every show. And so those shout outs go to Jeff Bartram, Paul Hussey, DJ Harbaugh, Pete White, Wolfgang Obergen, George Cassiopo, David Brander, Jonathan Wales, Alexi Heft, Lisa Kaz, Michael O'Prey, Logan Willis, Matthew Parra, Michael Lester, Robert Miracle, Jason Chalukas, Emotion Rentals, Richard Ouellette, Sean Fournier, Tim Hyde, Marcus Mayenshine, Lee Sweet, Lars Hoffman, Orion Coates, Peter Chalet, Harold Plug, Kenneth Martin, Michael Callahan, Rome Strack, David Vakil, Ulrich Lassa, Luke A., David Kittle, Eric Randolph, and David Nondahl. Thank you all so much for your incredible support with the podcast each and every month. I do want to mention our friends at abstractocean.com. I always mention the coupon code every week, but they've got some new stuff that you might want to take a look at. They just dropped me a line to let me know. They're just getting in. If you log in and you don't see them, just check back in the next week or so. This should all be popping up. Tempered glass screen protectors for the Model 3, complete, I'm told, complete with the screens are made to fit, and including the subtle curve. There's apparently a very subtle curve in the bottom of the glass, the bottom of the screen on the Model 3. So they've really gone the extra mile on these. Check those out. As well as coming soon, center console wraps. The piano black finish in the Model 3 is super prone to fingerprints. Like you look at it and fingerprints show up, and also scratches as well. It's that glossy piano black plastic material. I'm gonna wrap mine. I am gonna do one of these. I'm just trying to figure out which one they're gonna have. Looks like they're gonna have a couple different ones at Abstract Ocean. I'm thinking I might just go with a satin, like a matte satin piece of XPEL or Suntech, just the paint protection film, that same stuff that goes on the outside. Because I don't know, I personally I think I want to keep just the black look, but just take the gloss, take the fingerprint and scratchy factor out of it. But they're doing a carbon fiber one, which they sent me pictures, the Abstract Ocean folks, and it looks like real carbon fiber. Like it's a very detailed, like it's not just some cheap looking decal. So you can take a look at that. As well as, if you heard me talking about, remember Franz von Holzhausen's car, he took off the Tesla T logo on the trunk lid, or the top of the rear of his Model 3, and put on the Roadster style Tesla letters, the TESLA. Well, they're selling those now at Abstract Ocean as well. So anyway, this is way too long of a plug. AbstractOcean.com. You can find all that new stuff in the coming week or so. The coupon code for first-time buyers at Abstract Ocean is RTL Podcast. So use that coupon code at checkout. Meanwhile, Immaculate Reflections is standing by and waiting to protect, to detail, to serve your Model 3, to get it and keep it looking as beautiful as possible. Whether you want to do new car delivery prep, paint correction, paint protection film, C-Quartz Finest Reserve, ceramic coating, whatever you want to do, any of that, all of it, look them up, talk to them. You can figure out what's best for you. irdetailing.com is the website. And remember, 10% off anything for my listeners and their customers, for my listeners, with the coupon code RTL10. And if you're a military member or a veteran, You can just show your military ID or your veteran ID for another 10%, and those stack. So that's pretty cool. If you're buying a Model S or Model X, get yourself the free unlimited lifetime supercharging. It is the only way to get it. That's via referral. So use my cousin Pat in Arizona. Use his referral code. It's Patrick5008. Give that to your sales advisor or type in ts.la/Patrick5008 into your web browser to get that baked in when you order your car. Follow me on Twitter at DMC_Ryan. You can always email me, teslapodcast@gmail.com. Please do subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. That way it downloads to you automatically each week. You can subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, which of course is in the Tesla, Spotify, or the podcast hosting site where you can grab individual episodes as well as the RSS feed. You can find that at teslapodcast.libsyn.com. Libsyn spelled Libsyn. That will wrap it up for an absurdly long episode. Again, I want to be respectful of your time, so I will not ramble here at the end of the show. Thank you all so much, especially if you made it this far this week. It was a long episode, but there was obviously a lot to go over. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. And I, of course, will see you back here next week. Happy electric motoring.